Welcome, everyone, from the gorgeous campus of Notre Dame. It's the second day in a row that it is absolutely sunny out and in the low 70s. Students just returned on Monday to classes after spring break, and you can see them in shorts and bare feet walking all over campus. It's rejuvenating to see so much energy on campus and to see the students outdoors again and having so much fun. I want to wish all of you a day early, a very happy St. Patrick's Day. It's going to be a big celebration, as you can imagine, here on campus and in the surrounding community. Always a student affairs challenge on some of the activities that go on around here on St. Patrick's Day. But like all things, we hope things will be done in moderation. But really excited, as one of the few kind of resident Italian Americans here on campus, I like to point out that legend has it that St. Patrick was born to Rome at that time. The Roman Empire occupied that area. So in some ways, we believe he was Roman aristocracy originally. Patrick was. So I like to say that St. Patrick was Italian, but that doesn't always play really well in a lot of circles around here. But as Mark Twain said, you never want the truth to get in the way of a good story. So anyways, happy St. Patrick's Day, however you celebrate it. And don't forget St. Joseph Day is on Saturday as well. A big week for Notre Dame basketball. The men's team plays in the first four of the NCAA tournament tonight. It should start about 9:10 is what it's scheduled, maybe a few minutes late, against a very competitive Rutgers team in the first round. And then our women's team plays this Saturday out in Norman, Oklahoma, in the first round against a team from UMass. And so we wish our Irish all the luck in the world, and that the ball bounces in their direction here this week. It's my distinct pleasure now to introduce to you Laura Carlson. She is a professor of psychology, very distinguished professor here at the university. She is also the vice president and associate provost and the dean of the graduate school here at Notre Dame. As the senior leader of our graduate school since 2013, she oversees all aspects of the graduate school throughout the colleges and schools of the university. And she also oversees the Office of Postdoctoral Scholars. She, in addition to serving as dean of the graduate school, in the provost's office, she runs the ND Lead program, which is a faculty leadership development program which helps to groom our faculty for leadership roles as department chairs and beyond. She also serves as the secretary of the Academic Council, and she serves on the Provost Advisory Committee. And also she collaborates with the University Committee on Women, Faculty, and Students, and works to kind of build a great climate for female faculty on campus. And finally, she also oversees the Office of Military and Veterans Affairs. She's got a very full plate, and we're very lucky to have her as an administrator. So welcome, Laura, and thanks so much for joining us.
Hi.
You could just start out and maybe give us a little bit of a glimpse into your personal and professional background that predates your time here at Notre Dame.
Yeah, sure. I'm so happy to be here, Lou. Thanks for inviting me. Hi, everybody. And if you'll indulge me, special shout out to my mom, zooming in from Massachusetts. Family is critically important to me, so maybe I'll start my story to Notre Dame from there. So all my grandparents were immigrants from Sweden, and they settled outside of Boston. I grew up in Arlington and then Winchester, Massachusetts. Fun fact, my childhood home is a mile away from Jack Brennan, chair of the Board of Trustees' childhood home.
Wow.
And when I go home to see my mom and I run by his house every time.
And tell everybody you're an incredible runner. You've run how many marathons?
Well, it's upward of 30s. I'm currently training for my 11th Boston. So
wow.
It's kind of once you're in shape, you don't want to let it go. So
yeah, I haven't gotten to that point yet of being in shape, so I don't know that. So yeah.
So education was always important to my parents. My mom never went to high school. Went to high school, never went to college. But my dad put himself through night school at Northeastern. It took him 10 years. So he worked full time as a builder, built houses. Another fun fact is there's a street in Arlington called Elwern Road. And that is named, my dad built so many houses on that street, he was able to name it. And my mom's name is Elna, and my dad's name is Werner. And so you get Elwern Road, which I think I run down that street all the time too. And I have to stop myself from knocking on doors and telling people, do you know the story behind the name of your street? Anyway, I was lucky enough to go to Dartmouth as an undergraduate and had a really transformative experience there. You really can't understate the influence of faculty member on a student, especially an undergraduate student. And Carol Fowler was that person for me. It was because of her class in cognitive psychology that I fell in love with thinking about and learning about the way in which we represent the outside world internally. So I went on to graduate school, started at Michigan State, moved with my advisor to Illinois. So I had a really wonderful contrasting graduate experience because the program at Michigan State was pretty small. So it felt very much like a family. And then the program in Illinois is one of the top 5 programs. And it was incredibly vibrant, intellectually exciting. We had speakers in all the time. And so I really feel very lucky to have experienced both types of models. And then I came to Notre Dame straight out of my PhD, and that was 28 years ago.
Fantastic. And you tell us about you taught for how many years before you went into an administrative capacity, and what did your teaching and research focus on?
Yeah, so I like to say I grew up academically at Notre Dame. So I came in, joined the psychology department as an assistant professor, and then moved up through the ranks to a full professor. My favorite class was a research methods class, which was great because it was challenging. So it was a second in a sequence, and the first course in that sequence was a stats course. And at the time, psychology was not really viewed, it's sometimes not viewed as a science. And so it's unsettling to some that you actually need to do stats for it. It is a science. You do need to do stats for it. So they're coming off this required stats class and not feeling very good about it. And now they hit methods, which you might think could be very kind of dry material, but it's actually quite interesting. It's all about figuring out what is the right way to ask the research question that you have, and how do you balance the pros of the method you choose and the weaknesses of the methods you choose, and how can you defend your decisions. And so I love teaching that class. I taught that almost every semester that I was a faculty member. And then in 2000, I moved out of the department into becoming an associate dean in the grad school, and I headed up our professional development efforts, and then became dean in 2013.
Fantastic. So before we get started, most of the people watching today or will watch and replays are folks who are alumni who graduated with an undergraduate degree. Many are parents who have had students as undergraduates here at Notre Dame or currently have them as such. Can you tell us, why is graduate education vital and essential to an excellent university?
Yeah, it touches on every single one of our aspirations. So if you just think of the university goals to be an unsurpassed undergraduate education, we're seeing an embrace of experiential learning. So moving it out of the classroom, and what can you do in terms of hands-on experience out either in the community or in the lab. Labs are going much more team-based. Faculty are taking students, undergraduates and graduates to far-flung places to do their work. Graduate students are such a critical component of both the undergraduate experience here. They work side by side in the STEM fields with undergraduates. They mentor them, they teach them. It is absolutely critical to our research ambitions. So the very best faculty will come here and expect to have the very best graduate students. And so part of faculty hiring is really important, that we have really, really strong programs. But those are all the ways in which it connects.
Mhm.
But if you look at our mission statement for the university, graduate and professional education is called out there in and of its own terms. And so I think that's also worth noting, because if we believe in a holistic education for all students, that includes graduate and professional students. And actually, we'll talk about this later, but my vision for Notre Dame is that it becomes as known in the graduate education realm as it is in the undergraduate realm.
Fantastic. Can you share with everybody, Laura, what's the difference? Many, I think, on the outside don't know the difference between a graduate student and a professional student.
Oh, sure. So graduate students, well, they're all graduate students, really. Sometimes you use the word post-baccalaureate student to cover all of them. At Notre Dame, the professional students would be those tied to our professional schools, like the Mendoza School of Business, Architecture, Law. Those are largely outside of the graduate school proper, although I work very, very closely with those deans. It's super exciting, actually, that Mendoza just started 2 PhD programs. Those are more academic programs, and those do report up to the graduate school. That's really a wonderful partnership with the Dean of Mendoza to create those. So the professional programs have accreditations and they have a clear career path. For the academic programs, master's and doctoral degrees, there's a whole variety of career paths that people could take what they learn. Some paths are into the academy, but some paths are into industry, government, non-for-profit, and so on. And so we have a really great relationship with the Career Center and work very closely with students to think about how do they want to apply their expertise with this underlying idea to be a force for good in the world. And so the question is, what's the sweet spot that matches their passion and their expertise to the way in which they can have an impact?
So when you think about the fact that we're about 8,500 undergraduate students at Notre Dame, how big is the graduate school, the size, the scope of it? And tell us a little bit about what's going on. What are some things that are happening in graduate education at Notre Dame?
Okay, so we have about 2,500 students across our doctoral and master's programs. That's not going to include the professional schools. If you include those students, we're about 2/3 undergrad, 1/3 grad and professional.
Okay.
We have 78 official master's and doctoral programs that people can apply to. And there's whole diversity. And that's an ever-changing list. So I mentioned the 2 programs in Mendoza. Another set of new programs that I'm particularly excited about are ones that cross department boundaries or college boundaries. So programs that take on some of these bigger questions and think about approaching things in an interdisciplinary way. So material science and engineering, for example, or biophysics or integrated biomedical sciences are good examples of some newer programs in that realm. So that's sort of the scope of, I'd say, of our programs.
What's happening today? What are some things that are going on in the graduate school at this time?
Yeah. Oh, it's fun to brag. We have such great students. Maybe I'll share just a couple with you. So just announced that we received second place from Fulbright Foundation in terms of the highest number of awardees in the academic year 21-22. We had 26 winners, and that's both across undergraduate and graduate. So we have a very good working partnership with the CUSE office here, which is the Center for Undergraduate Scholarship and Engagement, and we partner on that. Fulbright is such an amazing opportunity. Students who apply select a country to go do their research in. So it's really one of the wonderful mechanisms that we can build our international community and our international connections and get the Notre Dame name out.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you know about Fulbright, it also has this important element of being an ambassador. And so what they are, part of that proposal is an articulation of the way in which you will engage, not just with whatever lab or wherever you're going to do your research, but also the way in which you'll engage meaningfully in that community. And so I can tell you the story of one Fulbright winner, Laura Alderfer. She's a doctoral student, and she is in our bioengineering program. She is currently in Finland doing some research with a National Academy member there. And I think an important part of her proposal was her articulation of how she would interact with the community. So I actually met Laura because we're both members of the South Bend Community Rowers. She's stroke seat. She sits in 8, front of the boat. I'm way in the back of the boat. But it's really great. I mean, in South Bend is such a community that is so welcoming of its graduate students. And so she has now joined a rowing club in Finland. And that's really just an important part of the way in which she can embrace all parts of that experience and also bring Notre Dame to all parts of that experience.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more, if you would, about the graduate student experience. Not like undergrad, most of our students are traditional and they come out here alone. Some of our graduate students come with spouses, some come with families, children. Tell us a little bit about how you try to make sure that the graduate student is as valued and feels just as important as the undergraduate student.
Yeah, I would say that has really been my mission since I've taken on in the graduate school, is having graduate students recognize how important they are to this university and really feel connected to this university. So it's often thought, and I think this part is true. If you ask an undergraduate something about their experience, they'll say first, typically, I go to Notre Dame, and then they'll say what their major is or whatever, but their affiliation is really strong with respect to the institution.
Right.
If you ask a graduate student that same question, they often say their discipline first. So if you were to ask me, I would say, oh, I'm a psychology. And then I would say where I did my graduate work, which is Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that is true. That's sometimes, though, taken to mean that graduate students, therefore, do not want to connect to the institution. And I think that is categorically wrong. So we have been working really, really hard to try to cultivate the sense of belonging so that graduate students here are happy and feel connected not only to their discipline, but also to Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame is so distinct in its mission, and the way in which it connects our Catholic foundation to everything that we do in terms of the kinds of research questions that we ask, the way that we treat each other, our sense of community. All of those things are critically important things that define this place in a unique way. And we absolutely should be leveraging those to get the very best students here. And so that's what we've been really working hard on. I think part of that is, I guess I would say there's probably 3 elements to that. Creating intentional communities. So the landings where we have housing for our graduate student families, for example, they have a community center there, they have playground there. That's sort of a follow on from the village. That sense of community is really critically important. And families, we know, I mean, Notre Dame should be a place that supports not only the student, but also the whole family unit. Yeah. So I think there are things that we can do moving forward too, to even create a stronger sense of that sense of community. So, I'm kicking around the idea of a graduate dorm, for example, a graduate residence. This is something the deans and I have talked about. It's modeled in places like Oxford, and students really feel connected to each other. It's a great way to cultivate an interdisciplinary work. I love this idea of, we have all these dining halls on campus. I love the idea of thinking about for a student who's, they typically live off campus, but they're here all day. So what if we were to think about making available 1 meal a day per student? now it becomes so easy to reach out to someone in the next building or in your program and say, hey, let's go get some lunch together. And that just fosters an incredible sense of community. Second thing I think is that students that would make us distinct, that we're already seeing signs of, is treating students like a whole person. So one of the mottos for the graduate school is your research matters. And if you write that out, you actually see the words "you matter" embedded in that. And that's really to try to emphasize all of the great work that's coming out of student affairs. Shout out to Mimi Beck in Grad Life, that you will be better as a graduate student. You will do better academically if you're also well in all other dimensions of your wellness. So if you're socially well, emotionally well, spiritually well, and so on. And so I think part of that also is making sure that we're offering full support for mental health and well-being for our students. Coming out of COVID, coming out of the racial injustice conversations, coming out of political divisiveness, coming out of what's happening in the world. There's so many external stressors that are added on to an already very stressful experience that is graduate school and undergraduate for that matter. I think it's really, really important that we provide a great set of tools and resources and signal that well-being is critically important. And shout out to our advisory council, the Grad Studies and Research Group, for just incredible support and commitment to mental health and well-being. It's interesting, we've tried to empower our students too to believe this, and this is what gives me hope. So over fall break, most of the undergraduate students go away somewhere, but graduate students are here and they're working. And so, our team sat and thought about, are there things that we can do to help students' mental health and well-being during fall break? So things like we could bring in pet therapy dogs, we could do finger painting, anything that we could think of that would be one of these tools or techniques that would help reduce stress. And what we heard from students is they are hearing the Be Well message, but they wanted to kind of do it on their own terms. And I think that is really great. So we started this Be Well fund. So students pursue whatever wellness makes sense for them. So I like to run. Maybe it's buying a new pair of running shoes. You could row, you could paint, you could cook, any of those things. You could go together with other students and take a trip, enjoy the arts. Any of those things you could submit and get some reimbursement for. And the response has been absolutely incredible. So I think, and it shows me that they're hearing the message and they are trying to figure out how to factor that in. And I think we absolutely need to cultivate that it is really important to get out of the lab and do something that just makes you happy. Because when you then go back into the lab, you'll be so much better. You'll be more mentally rested and better able to engage. And then I guess the last thing I'd say, Lou, that is really important that we should be known for is that the strongest programs are the ones that are the most diverse. And so we really need to be very intentional about attracting the very best and brightest students, incredibly welcoming to them and support them. People come at the preparation for graduate school at a very set of experiences. Some have done really intensive research work as an undergraduate. Some it's pretty new too. And so what are the ways in which we can put structures in place to help support all of that?
So why do you think, Laura, students choose to pursue a graduate education at Notre Dame, and how competitive is it, to select a class?
Yeah, good question. So shout out to our admissions group. They are working really hard to get the word out about Notre Dame programs. And last year was a record number. We crossed 6,200 applications. And this year we're flirting with 6,500. So it's a record number of students interested in coming to Notre Dame. If you look overall, our selectivity is on par with undergraduate. So it's actually quite difficult to get admitted. Some programs have bigger classes than others, but overall it's not necessarily easy. But that's good because we want to be bringing in the very best students. And I would say one of the things that helps us is when we can bring those prospective students to campus. So, I mean, I'm just looking out the window past my screen, and
Yeah.
it's, everyone's out. The vibe is amazing. And when you bring graduate students here, they absolutely feel that as well. But then they also get to engage with our faculty, which is like the number one reason you go to grad school, is you find the faculty member who's doing the work that you want to do. It's very much an apprentice model. And our facilities are absolutely incredible. So I think though the campus, facilities, faculty, and then it is the case, I think, that this recognition of students here and their value and their connection and sense of belonging, we've tracked that over time. We have a grad life survey that goes out every 2 years. And one of the questions I look at very closely is their sense of belonging to campus. And that is steadily increasing. And that's becoming something that really differentiates us. And then probably the last thing that is the most unique differentiator that I think is absolutely the vision for where we need to go is our ambition in everything we do to be a force for good in the world. We are starting to think and talk about that much more intentionally with graduate students. That's the Your Research Matters part of that motto. And my vision is that we are also a place that students come here because they can ask the questions and have an expectation that those questions apply to a real world problem, and that they will be able to do the work and see the impact. And boy, that would be pretty exciting. That would enable us to be who we are as an institution. And that's where we need to go next, I think.
Well, you invited me a few years back, Laura, to participate in the 3-minute thesis, and to watch a number of PhD students, probably 30 or so or more, in 3 minutes with a big timer behind them, tell us what their thesis is about, what their research impact really is, was incredibly inspiring. And you want to talk about a force for good. Many of them were pioneering solutions, finding cures, working on issues that to date have been insoluble, and making significant breakthroughs. I know that this is, without COVID being a dynamic here, this has become kind of an annual practice, this 3-minute thesis competition, and then they can go on to regionals and nationals. I was just really inspired by that. Is there a way for people to access that, and anything you'd like to comment about that program?
Yeah, I mean, I love that program. So the immediate question is, yes, they can look at the videos of the winners. If you just go, I think it's 3mt.gradschool.nd.edu, something like that, or just go to the grad school homepage and type 3MT and you'll find the winners. Shar Brekovec is the winner this year. She's a doctoral student in our history and philosophy of science program, and she'll be competing in a couple weeks at the Midwestern Association for Graduate School. So good luck, Shar. We have a really good track record, actually, of placing in that competition, and also placing. There's going to be an ACC-wide competition, and she'll be competing there as well. And I think why we're so successful is that we have a whole professional development apparatus around it to help students distill out what is the most important critical pieces of their work that is accessible without dumbing down it. So that's really critical. You can talk about anything if you make it simple enough. And so the fun challenge is actually talking about it in a way that honors the science and honors the scholarship, but is also accessible. And so there's great partnership with the library, the Writing Center, and so on to help students craft their 3-minute presentations. We do kind of stress them out a little bit, and maybe I feel a tiny bit bad about that, but so they're on a big stage, they have a timer that counts down, as you said, in the back, and we will yank them and it will buzz if they don't finish in 3 minutes. That's just part of the rules. But it's always one of the best evenings. And actually, I should say, she's competing at this Midwest Association for Graduate Students or for graduate schools. And at that same meeting, we're also honoring another graduate student, doctoral student in sociology, Faiza Akova for excellence in teaching. So she won the MAGS Excellence in Teaching Award. And that's also something that we have a great track record. She's the second winner in a row. We had 2 honorable mentions before that. So
Wow, that's fantastic.
yeah, our students are very well trained in their professional abilities here. And it's, it's my job to make sure the world knows that. And those are just 2 important signs of that.
Any research anecdotes that have come from PhD students that have particularly grabbed you and like, wow, that might be worth sharing, a particular research focus or something that maybe surprised you or captivated you in some way? I know there's so many and it's difficult to highlight.
There's so many.
Right,
I mean,
right. A few examples maybe without
well,
going.
maybe the one I would talk about is Maria Gibbs. She may have been the winner when you did it. So this goes back a couple years ago,
Yeah.
but so what you should do, I'll invite everybody to do, is go to the grad school website again. And on the front, there's a video that plays and it's called Your Research Matters. And it has a really nice narrative. The important part about that video is that every image that you see profiles a graduate student work, right? So if you see kids running across a flutter bridge, that's Maria Gibbs' work,
That's
right?
right. That's
you
right.
see an amputee with a prosthetic running on a treadmill. That's Ann Martin's work. She's now a faculty member at Penn State. She was a Shaheen winner, for example, out of Jim Schmiedler's lab. And incredibly interesting and impactful work, both of those projects. So there's a book that actually for each image talks about who the student is and what the research project is.
That's great. I remember it probably was 4 or 5 years ago. I remember Maria Gibbs' presentation since you highlighted it. There's footbridges, right? In many parts of the developing world. And one of the things is when high winds come in, the flutter effect, destroys them and makes it difficult for people to cross to school, for medical emergencies, everything else. And I know she measured it. She found a way to use an iPhone to kind of attach it and to gather all the data and to build better bridges. It was absolutely fascinating. She talked through her research and the impact that it's had on so many remote communities throughout the world. And it was incredibly inspiring. Let me just say that Father John and the Board of Trustees recently have approved this new emphasis on a strategic goal for Notre Dame. And it says simply, provide superb graduate and professional programs that exhibit disciplinary excellence, foster interdisciplinary connections, and engage the world's most pressing problems while attending to the holistic development of students. It sounds to me like the graduate school is going to be an increasingly important focus for Notre Dame going forward. Can you share with us any insights about your vision as the leader for taking us to kind of new heights in that direction?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what we've chatted about, right? It's all of the elements that are in there. We expect students to come here to get a solid grounding and expertise in a discipline, but not so narrowly do it this way, but do it with an eye towards connecting and thinking about partnering with adjacent disciplines to ask some of the really important questions that will really have impact. That was the first part of what you said. And I feel like that's where Notre Dame needs to go as an institution, is to become, we talk about our university goals, and sometimes we talk about them in a series, right? So we say, our Catholic foundation should inform everything we do. We have an unsurpassed undergraduate education. We have research and scholarship in graduate education. And I'd say over the last 10 years, we have made great progress on all of those. But I think of them as kind of running in parallel. And I think the next thing we need to do is absolutely look at the intersections of those. So what is the intersection of graduate education and our Catholic foundation look like? Well, that's something that the Board of Trustees has been working really hard on for the last couple of meetings, is what makes graduate education distinct at Notre Dame and distinguished. in laying out the ways in which our commitment to Catholic social teaching informs the policies, procedures, the kind of research that we ask, and so on. I feel like that is absolutely the future of graduate education.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of what you read is also critically important, and that's the development of the whole self. And
Mm-hmm.
so we know how important that is. We just look to the undergraduate education and undergraduate experience and know that we're about forming the whole person. Well,
Mm-hmm.
formation doesn't stop when you get your undergraduate degree.
Right.
Formation is true actually for all of us, right? We're still growing. All of us are still growing. So we should absolutely be committed to a formation of the whole being in our graduate and professional education too. And more than that, we should be known for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's the vision, that the same way in which undergraduate education, Notre Dame is known for that,
Yep.
it should also be known for that for our graduate and professional studies.
Fantastic. I mean, Father Soren's vision, our founding DNA, is to not only be a great university, but one of the most powerful means for good in all of society. And I do believe that in the last couple of decades, we've really entered more energetically than ever in the domain of seeing research as a way to solve problems, to find cures, to make the human condition better. And the graduate school is a driving force in all of that, the work that we do here. How about any parting thoughts that you might have to share, Laura, as we break? Any final thoughts on the future of graduate school education and what some of your hopes and dreams might be?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think it's an incredibly exciting time. And so really what I think I'll say is thank you. Um, you know, this is not, even though I'm dean of the graduate school, this is not only me. It's
Right.
going to take the whole university. And there's just been incredible support from the board, from Father John, from the deans, from the provost office, and wider than the academy. So, I'll share this story. You might remember this, Lou, because I think you spoke out actually at our retreat last summer with the President's Leadership Group. We were talking about engaging in our new strategic plan. And that's a wonderful time to sort of look at your university goals and ask, are those the right goals? Are there changes that want to be made? Or where are we charting for the next 10 years? And so David Bailey's fantastic presents this set of new goals, and it was the same three that we'd seen, right?
Yep.
Catholic foundation, undergraduate education that's unsurpassed, research and scholarship, and the proposal was that there would be a fourth goal around holistic graduate and professional education.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of paused and he said, so what does the group think about this? And this is a group of academic leaders and then also all the leaders across the university that work in support of kind of academics. So, you were there. I don't know if you remember this. And so he just kind of paused. And of course, I was happy about it. But as dean of the grad school, I was like, I cannot be the one to say something about this first.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out I didn't have to say a word because I think you spoke up first and saw how important it was that we make a commitment to all students in the same way we're making a commitment to undergrads. But more than that, how it connects and really would leverage and support all the other goals as well. And then person after person spoke up and saw that this was really an important moment and an important effort for the university. And so maybe that's where I'll end, is just with a thank you. I have such gratitude and appreciation for the support that I feel in the work that I'm trying to do. It's absolutely distributed work, and we will only do it if we're all aligned. And it's a pretty exciting time because it feels aligned.
That's great. That's great to hear. And we've made tremendous strides, and your leadership has been critical to that. But you'd be the first to admit we've got a long way to go, and we've got a lot of work to do to still really strengthen our graduate and research agenda here, which affects every dimension of life at the university, and more importantly, that vision of being the most powerful means for good and in society. So thank you for your leadership, Laura. Thanks for taking some time today to share your vision and experiences with us. I know there's going to be many folks that are going to want to support the graduate school in one dimension or another going forward. And as we always do, in the name of Our Lady, to whom this university is dedicated, we invite all of you as we close to join with us in a prayer to Our Lady. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Again, thank you, Laura. Thank you all for listening and looking in. And God bless. Go Irish. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Go Irish.